So I, was engaged to be married, and it was that year of Beyoncé, headlining Coachella.
Okay.
And my ex fiance was like, "We can't go to Coachella. We can't go to Coachella. We're getting married. We need to save money for this wedding." And I'm like, God, it's Beyoncé though. Like, how am I not going to go? Like, but I was like, okay, I'm in this relationship. I was like, all right, fair. I have to, I'm in this partnership, and we were engaged to be married. And sure enough, we broke up. And so I didn't go to Beyoncé, and I didn't have a wedding.
Oh my God.
And so that's my only regret I ever had in my entire life, is not going to Coachella to see Beyoncé. So at the end of the day, kids, choose Beyoncé.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. There's nothing more fascinating to me about this earth than the people who inhabit it. My mission is to create deep, vulnerable, and open conversations that invite our unique guests to share the arc of their ever-evolving journey through life, in the hope that their stories inspire and resonate with you, our listeners. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. What is up? Welcome to the Weekly Transit. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian, here with my guest, Alicia Easter, aka Ace. Welcome, Ace.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome, Ace. It's great to have you here. I met Ace. Let's see. It was about 6 years ago or so. You were introduced to me by my good friend Amber Herzog Lyman, and so we've worked together periodically over this time period. But Ace is just a fascinating, interesting individual. I'm doing this podcast now, interviewing people, because there's nothing more interesting to me in the world than the people that inhabit the world. And Ace, you're one of these individuals that I'm always fascinated by. I love your energy. Ace is a certified yoga and meditation instructor. She has a podcast, Joy for Life. She's a master Reiki practitioner with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, Human Resource Management from Auburn University. She transitioned from working in the corporate world for Brookfield, which, if you don't know Brookfield, I'll let Ace tell you about Brookfield. But from my own perspective, working in downtown Los Angeles for about 8 or 9 years, I couldn't help but know Brookfield, because Brookfield was the company that my restaurant paid rent to. So, this is Brookfield owns like half of downtown LA. I think they have like $1 trillion in asset management under management.
Yeah, something like that. They used to. It's been a lot of change since then, but that is really funny that is where I remember, like, kind of meeting you, but not knowing this. We didn't know each other. We met, like, we didn't really meet. So
exactly. So Ace moves from Brookfield, and now she's a full-fledged entrepreneur. She's a life coach. She, as I said, yoga instructor, meditation instructor, does retreats. Just like you're a force of nature, Ace. And you've really taken, I feel like, that energy from the corporate world and brought it into your own business. And it's very inspiring to see how you transitioned over. Like, was it like 2-3 years ago or so? And 4 years ago. Wow. It's been that long. Yeah. And I remember, that shift for you. Very exciting. But let's start. I want to get to all that, but I want to start at the beginning. Like, what's the origins of Ace? Like, where does Ace come from? That nickname Ace, and your childhood, and share it all with me. Tell me.
Okay, I love that. First of all, again, Scott, thank you so much for having me. It's an
You're
honor to
welcome.
be here.
Yes.
I remember meeting you when I still had long hair, and
wow.
I like had a session. I met up with you, and it was like, okay, and I had my birth time wrong, so that was like, again, very reminiscent, a very good way to kind of segue into the origins of me. I was born April 15th. In 1983. And so being in Baltimore, Maryland, grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and raised by a single mom up until she got married. And then it was like my brother and I have one brother, and he and his family live in Dallas. And, growing up, my brother and I are 2 years apart. And so believe it or not, like, I was very shy, but not with like my family and not with my brother or anything, but as like most little kids are. I just remember like my mom walking us to school and me just being so nervous my first day of my brother and I, we were in daycare because my mom worked. And so she took us to daycare. And I remember like I would have to stay next to him the entire time when we go into daycare, and just like until I felt comfortable and safe enough to venture out on my own. And then the same thing at school. It was like, okay, oh my gosh, you're leaving me here all day. What did I do wrong? Are you going to come back for me? I was very dramatic. That might not surprise you if you know me in real life, but I was very, it was very dramatic. I was very like, make sure you come back and get me. Make sure you don't leave me. And why am I here again? And I could definitely, I just remember when I was little, like standing up against like the glass at the daycare, like crying. My mom's walking away. Her heart's probably breaking every time she drops me off because I'm crying. But then I would find my brother and I would be fine. I mean, my brother would go in and he'd leave me and be like, you'll be fine. And I'm like, I'm going to get taken, and then I ended up being all good. And then just kind of moving into this space of like, wellness, and was not definitely anything that I thought would be like on my chart, in life. Right. So when we grew up in Baltimore, we played sports outside, just like, in the city kids, we were city kids. And then when we moved to Atlanta,
how old were you when you moved to Atlanta from Baltimore to Atlanta? What was the age there?
I was 10.
10.
So I was 10. Yeah. So I was 10 years old, moved from Atlanta to Baltimore.
Or from Baltimore to Atlanta, right?
Or Baltimore to Atlanta. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for that. Yeah. From Baltimore to Atlanta, and moved in. It was a completely different place in Atlanta growing up, how we grew up in Baltimore. Baltimore, predominantly Black neighborhood. It was like one white family on the street that was friends with us. It was, we were all in and out of my grandmother's house, like playing every day, every night. Like we'd go to aunts and uncles and cousins' houses, like really having this big village. Surrounding us, to Atlanta, where it was not the case. And so going to the suburbs and being like a predominantly like white school, and just being like a fish out of water, and really having this I remember when my brother and I were in Baltimore, we were in like chess club. We took tap dancing lessons. Like my mom had us doing something every weekend, and we were in advanced classes too. And I'm saying all this because when I moved to Atlanta, we were like not. And it was very interesting because it was kind of the first time I felt othered. In my life. And I hadn't like felt like that before, being surrounded by everyone who looked like me versus being in a classroom where it was completely different. So, but I again, playing sports growing up, no matter where I was always an active kid. So
what was the reason for the move from Baltimore?
My mom's husband at the time, he got a job transfer to Atlanta, and it moved us there. Okay. So, which I love that we did. was the best thing, I say this, that came out of that marriage, was us moving to Atlanta, because Baltimore is a rough city. You know, it's a beautiful place and my family is there, but it's just not, it was where we grew up and how we grew up. It was just like it was really tough. It was really tough. And so just kind of like, especially my brother, like just making sure like we both had like these access to different things, you know, it's like being in that environment in Baltimore where we grew up versus like where we were in Atlanta. It's like access to different things, like, you know, organized sports and, you know, just like being in this like bubble sort of like suburban existence where you're just like a kid, just can kind of be a kid. Like I was able to just kind of be a kid sometimes, but not every time, not all the time. And then moving down there was like, again, it was great because it got us into organized sports. It really like, you know, I found trouble or trouble found me. As like,
Aries.
You know,
Aries is the sign that's ruled by Mars. That's the god of war. So you identify with conflict and you're, you know, who you identify with yourself, and you know, it's like you're ready to hit first and ask questions later.
It's like, let's rock and roll, baby. Like, what is like, let's go. And so, but also just like being a really rebellious kid, and also really having, but also like playing sports at the same time. And my grades like slipped as, you know, just, I didn't really apply myself academically as much as I did, you know, with my extracurricular activities, but really the sports was a great outlet for me.
Sports?
I played softball. I ran track. I was a cheerleader. So I played sports all season. So it was like, you know, I stayed busy. My mom made sure that we stayed busy, and I loved that. I loved playing sports. I loved team activities. And it also was a great outlet for me, what I was experiencing just kind of like in my home life, a lot of tumultuous, like, you know, things and energy at the house. And so me not really being able to express myself as effectively, definitely not as effectively as I am now. I was just had a lot of pent up anger, and fear and all these sort of things that I would manage on when I would play sports. And
what was the root of that, do you think?
The root of that was just kind of like how, you know, my mom and my stepdad interacted, and how my stepdad was like angry and abusive and whatnot. And so
when did he come into your life?
When I was 10.
I was 9. So 9.
When I was 9.
So your mom and him met when you were 9, and then a year later they were married and you were moving to Atlanta. Wow.
Yeah, quick. It was like either 8 or 9.
Yeah.
It was really fast.
Yeah.
It was really fast. And I was really young. Like,
and they had a combative relationship?
Yes. Yeah, it was a combative relationship. And it was just like, you know, it was, you know, not every time was bad. Not all the time it was bad, but it was pretty traumatic. Like I had a pretty traumatic childhood. And but growing up, going to Atlanta and being surrounded by people that, you know, may or may not have been navigating their own trials and tribulations and trauma in their own house, and being, you know, in this area where it was pretty affluent, and we weren't, you know, so then kind of like, you know, having that be a component as well. My mom worked a lot of jobs just to make sure that ends would be met. And so, yeah, it was really interesting moving from Baltimore to Atlanta, and how I really loved it, but it was so hard and it was so different than how I grew up and all I knew. And then I didn't have my grandmother. I didn't have my aunts. I wasn't with my cousins. And so just really, I felt like I had no friends. And, then I made friends in sports, and I made friends at these, like, you know, extracurricular club activities and things like that. So yeah, just kind of transitioning to that. And then growing up in Atlanta, being there, playing sports there, navigating that, you know, growing up as a teen and a kid and not really knowing myself, experimenting, you know, with different things, like I said, getting into trouble. And then, but also just like, yeah.
What was the trouble you were getting into?
Well, just like teen stuff, you know, like teen stuff, like underage drinking and like, you know, experiencing like, you know, with different like drug use
yeah.
and stuff like that. Just kind of like, but never getting like addicted to anything, and also never like enough to where I'm going to like Shrek on my responsibilities at school and not show up for a game or anything like that. Like I always had
where the line was.
Yeah, I toted the line.
Yeah.
I toted the line. I toted, that was my entire childhood, is me toting the line of like knowing like if I go one step too far here, I'm going to go off the deep end. And that's just like it's just like non-negotiable for me. Like it was non-negotiable for my mother. Like I knew I was going to go to college when I graduated. I was on a college preparatory course. And again, I was just surrounded by people that was like, everybody was going to college, you know? So when all your friends are going to college and you like don't, it's like, okay, what are you doing? You know, you
were rising up with everybody else around you. You were keeping at their pace.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, graduated from high school 2001 and just went to Auburn, as you mentioned in my introduction.
Yeah. And what was that? That's a big school. Yeah.
Huge school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I went there because it was about 45 minutes away from where my brother was in college. And so
he
was going to Alabama State University, in Montgomery, Alabama. And so, us being that close, and then also my senior year, my mother getting sick, getting diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, it was great to have both of her kids like close enough, you know, at school and while we were at school. And, you know, I know that was probably like hard for us to leave, but it was also like all that she'd worked for. You know, the reason was she worked.
Go to school.
Yeah. To go to school and to succeed in life, right? To, you know, have all the things that she never had. And, you know, I think that's every parent wants that for their child. Like, doesn't matter how successful the parent is, they almost want their kid to be like, have more than them. That's why they work as hard as they do. And so just, again, like just kind of navigating, being at Auburn, my mother being sick.
So I want to get into your mom in a second here. Because I know it's a big part of your story. And but before we do, I just want to, you know, reflect on your astrological code and everything that you've just shared with me. You know, because it's fascinating. You know, you're an Aries sun, as we established. You know, born April 15th. So that's, you know, ruled by the god of war. So you're somebody who identifies with yourself. You have a very strong self-awareness, and you know, you can be combative because you're so courageous in protecting yourself. But it's interesting how you brought up, you know, that shyness as a little kid going to school, you know, and also the you know, how you felt all that anger growing up as a kid with your mom and your stepdad and the combativeness of their relationship. I think that's attributed to your Cancer rising, because Cancer is a very impressionable sign. Like the crab doesn't, you know, the crab picks up sand and carries it with it along the beach, not because it wants to, but because it's a product of its environment. So you pick up energy from people, places, and things. So if your mom and your stepdad are getting into it at the house and you're there, you're taking on that rage, that anger, and then it's transmuting in an emotional expression to those around you when you leave the house. But also Cancer, the crab is subtle. And so it's that sideways walking creature. And that's what, you know, can make a little kid just like, oh, I'm not really sure about these people. I need to kind of fill it out before I truly open myself up. But it sounds like your brother was like your protector, and your third house is in Leo. That's the lion. The third house is the house of siblings. So the third house being in Leo would indicate that your brother is like your protector. He's the lion, the king, who is looking after his little princess sister. And so, and then, you know, the team aspect, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets, a 6-planet stellium in the 11th house, which is the house of friendship, which represents the group, the club, the organization, the social network, the social cause, the team. So even though you're somebody who has a strong identification in terms of yourself, you also strongly identify with being a part of a group or a team. And you know, we're going to put your social media handles in the show notes, but you got to follow Ace on the socials. You know, she's a social media maven on there, and you know, very active, great content. And so, but the connection to your mother as a Cancer rising, you know, Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon is the mother, and the ascendant, the rising sign, is your personality. So, you know, that is also a strong part of how you identify or how you show up in the world, is through the expression or the reflection of the energy that your mother shared with you. So tell us more about your experience with your mother, your relationship with your mother.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. And I forgot to mention, like, you know, forgot to answer the question about where Ace came from. Ace is my initials. Yeah. It's Alicia Krista Easter. And that's, you know, and it's like, that's the relationship with my mother.
Your mom did that on purpose, obviously, right?
I have no idea. I'll never know. I'll never know. But I honestly will never know. But like no one called me Ace growing up. And except for like my best friend in high school, she started to call me Ace.
Oh, wow.
And I know, right? And then I adopted Ace. I started going by Ace when I started my yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Los Angeles.
Oh, it's perfect name for LA. So yeah.
It's great. You know, it's great. But it's so funny how like playing sports, no one ever, like, it was just always Easter, you know? So, but really having, you know, my relationship with my mom was, there were moments that were really like, you know, we just butted heads, you know, because I would be so frustrated with her about kind of what she allowed, what she put up with. And I really wanted more. I wanted her to really stand up for herself and really fight back, you know? And I feel like she just like never did. And in the moment she did, it was just kind of like, I don't know. So that would really frustrate me as a little kid. But our relationship, you know, it was, I mean, to be honest, it was a bit short-lived, you know, like there wasn't much time we had where it was just us, you know, like you know, like I said, her ex-husband came into our lives when I was like 8 and I believe 8 or 9.
They got a divorce.
And then they got a divorce when I was like 17.
Oh, wow.
So, and then my mom died when I was 19. So, and like my brother is 2 years older than me, as I mentioned. And so he, you know, went to school and, you know, went to college and, it was really, and so my mom and I really just kind of had times where I think that I was just like, I wanted everything that I saw my friends have. Right. So I get it when I talk to friends who, you know, we live here in LA and they're like, I don't know, I'm a little afraid of raising my kid in Los Angeles because it's like, I want them to be in some sort of like bubble. I want them to see, you know, just because I see kids at a school where I teach are driving Teslas, you know, and it's like, that's, you know, I wanted a car. I wanted, you know, things. I wanted to be able to go on like, you know, like spring break with my friends. And that just wasn't in the budget for my mother. That was just like not happening for her and for us. And I was just really frustrated and really wanted more, but it was like, was what it was. You know, when you're a little kid, you get it, but you kind of don't understand, well, why don't you have the same thing as like their parents have? Or why don't we have a house? Why are we living in an apartment? Why don't we have a nice car? Why don't we have, you know? But my mom did the best she could, honestly. And it was and she was a great mother. And I got to a certain point in my life where I know that, you know, her and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things and a lot of ways on how to approach stuff. But, you know, I loved her. And I even got frustrated when she got sick because I was just like, fuck, like, you know, like you're like dying and like, you know, your divorce just got final. Like so it'll be just the girls I thought in here. And then, you know, but then now like, you're sick. And so again, I was 19 years old. I was 18 years old and then 19 years old. And my brain wasn't even fully developed yet, but I was navigating all of these different things the best way I knew how without, you don't really, when you're young, you don't really think your parents are ever going to die.
Yeah.
They're like old, right? But you're like, I mean, they're not going to die, like they don't die. Like, what are you talking about? But I think that informed me in my relationship with death now, where I am at 41, where I have this, and informed the way in which how I show up in the world, and a lot of the work that I do is informed by the fact that, like, I remember, my mom and I would do this thing called For Sisters Only, and it was hosted by V103 radio station in Atlanta each year. And it was like vendors and whatnot would be there. And that would be our thing we would go to. And I knew that was like a really big deal for her and I to go and do that together. And, it was really fun. And it felt like, I would shop and like, I don't know. I just know now as a grown up, like how you find, you make it work as best you can as a parent. You find and you do your best and you're like, okay, I might not have a lot of money, but let me see how I can create experiences, how I can create memories. And my mom did that. And she also wasn't an absent mother, like she showed up and was at our games. And both my brother and I were all season athletes. So there was no days off, even in the summer, but she showed up. And I think that is something also that is like, I learned from her is be there for, I don't have kids yet, but like, be there for your friends, show up for your community. And that's also something that I'm learning too, is like, yeah, that's my personality, is to show up for people and remember how they like their tea and remember like, oh, you lost your mom this time. I'm sending you love. I'm thinking about you, like all of these sort of things and being that way. And I got a lot of that from my mom. I got a lot of her, volunteerism. I got a lot of her. Honestly, I got my entrepreneurial spirit from her, even though she was never really able to be a full-time entrepreneur, but she was always like had these little side things that she would do, from selling Amway, Tupperware, Mary Kay, like Avon, like it was just a bunch of different things and ways in which she would always just kind of say, like, just, I see how she just had this deep desire and I feel it now in my spirit. And I see her very visibly right now in this very moment, like sitting on her bed, like trying to figure it out, and being like, how can I just show up and be the best mom for my kids and create this existence for them so they don't have to struggle like me, or my daughter doesn't have to be in a tumultuous relationship or a marriage or whatever, like, because she can't afford to go anywhere. And, it's just, again, I just wish that I'd been able to really have conversations with her. But, we ran out of time, and like having these conversations, not as women to women, as woman to woman versus like
grown woman to grown woman,
grown woman to grown woman, child to adult, which is very much what I still was when she passed away.
I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. You were like, what, a freshman in college when your mom passed? I mean, that's wow. I mean, everyone else is like partying, having fun. They're in college. It's exciting. And you're like, what was that like for you?
I was doing all of that, but still being like, okay,
grieving.
I have to make sure that my rent is paid. I got to make sure I pay these bills. I got to make sure that I save money so I can stay in school. Like, I don't have parents come in and figuring out. I got to, make sure that I keep, my bank account so I can buy food. I can pay my utility bills, like all these sort of things of adulting, like, and I don't regret that, but it definitely aged me faster than the people that I was surrounded by. And my prayer is that when I become a mom, that my kids have a soft existence for as long as possible, right? Like where they can really not have to worry about navigating the different intricacies of adulthood too soon. So,
Right.
but again, it's also like it made me who I am today. It made me someone who could travel around the country for work for 6 years and live in a new city and state every
And
6 to
that's what
8
you
weeks.
did right out of college.
Yeah, that was the first job that I got out of
Tell
college.
us
And like
about
being
that. What
being
was
able
that
to do
about?
that, I mean, it was amazing. I would, got this job where I would at least I worked for this company that was a consulting company out of Atlanta. And funny enough, it was like on the same street I grew up on.
Oh, wow.
And they would get hired by different owners and managers of residential properties around the country to bring in leasing specialists to help them lease apartments and with their marketing and train their team. And so I did that for almost 6 years. And it was a bit, nomadic in the sense where I had an apartment. And then my lease ran up in my apartment, I moved in with a friend of mine who had a spare room in his house that I would just like pay him rent for. And then when he got married, he sold the house. And so they bought a house together. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to get another apartment that I'm not going to be in and pay rent. And so I just kind of like floated around. And any time that I was on my vacation, I would stay at my brother's house. I would go stay at a friend's house. I would just travel. And it was really fun. It was exciting. I'm 23, like traveling the country. And I'm just like, this is amazing. But like also running from the need to grieve, which is what I've talked about before. And I've shared with you before, running from being settled down anywhere. And I had a boyfriend all throughout college. We broke up in my senior year. And I was like, I'm not moving back to Atlanta to like work at a job and just like get married and get pregnant and have and this just be the end of my story. But it's like, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just knew that
wasn't you.
That wasn't me. And I knew that I needed to see the world and I needed to like experience the world in a different way. I needed to like touch places and see places and smell and feel, because I've always just kind of, since I was a little kid, knew that I wanted to work for myself. I just didn't even know what that meant. I didn't grow up in a house where people were entrepreneurs. I didn't grow up in a house. Like I applied to one college, Auburn, and I got in, and it was like, I didn't know, like I didn't have this like plethora of applications or having my mom help me. It was, she was sick. And so I just figured it out. And I think that figured it outness like is something that I really appreciate. And it got me to where I am today. But I'm really relishing and embracing the fact of like, I can create this beautiful, soft existence for myself and thrive and not feel like I, have to grind and work so hard and like prove and do all of these things just to get by. Like I'm not surviving anymore. I literally feel like I am in one of the most delicious places I've ever been in my life. But it's like, in my story, it's just, every day our story is just the beginning, right? Like every day is like, an opportunity to begin again and to see what life has in store, and just really trusting and really like finding that, growing, like I didn't grow up knowing about astrology and whatnot, but then meeting with you for the first time, really starting to understand myself and really help, because when you don't have parents anymore, both my mom and my dad are passed away. I didn't know my dad, so I don't know anything I learned some things about him through a mediumship, a medium that I, had medium situation that I had a couple of years ago. But when you're just trying to figure out who you are without the two people who co-created you, you're just kind of like, oh, is that me? Is that me? Is that me? Is that what I'm into? Is that what I'm into? Is that, very much like how I thought that I had, I thought I was a Leo rising, but it was like my time was off. And then when I found my actual birth time, it was like, oh, like, okay, so just putting the pieces of my life together, putting, grasping for straws growing up and really still even being an adult, like putting it all together and finding out about myself. And so it has been exciting to have astrology be something where I get to learn about me. I get to learn about me before I was even here. I get to learn about me and plans that I can have for the future, And I, of course, like, it's also staying open to all possibilities,
Yeah, that's kind of in alignment with your North Node in Gemini. Gemini is the sign of curiosity, and it's in your 12th house, which is the house of the unconscious. So really, you're here to develop a curiosity about the depths of your own psyche. Like, why am I the way that I am? And, what is at the root of my thought process that creates my reality? It's really about learning about your unconscious world. That's your role in this life. It's also, your North Node is also aligning with your sun. So that increases the identity. It's aligning with your Pluto. So you're tapping into the unconscious parts of yourself and curiosity about the unconscious parts of yourself. But that curiosity is stimulated by your relationships and how your relationships affect your heart, how the group and connecting to the group or the team, how they influence your unconscious mind. It's about digging in deep into and pulling out the light, getting the light out of the depths of your psyche, to really understand understand yourself. But tell us, how did you get to LA? Where does LA come into the mix for you?
So my sister-in-law is from Long Beach.
Oh, okay.
And so,
it's my neighborhood.
So she's from Long Beach, and her and my brother met in college. And then when she graduated, she came back home. And then when my brother was done with his master's, because she's my age, so he's 2 years older, so he had a couple more years left of school. And then he moved back. He came out here to be with her. And so, like I mentioned before, my job was traveling. And so I would always come out here and visit them. And on one of my vacations, I met someone when I was out here. Mm-hmm. And I was already at the end, like I'd already been like 6 years in with this job. And as I mentioned before, it's fun, but it was also really taxing because you're literally like, I'd be somewhere for 8 weeks, but then be off for 3. But then it was just kind of like, I never knew where I was going next. So It was very, unstable in that regard, but it was like it was ritualistic to me. It made sense to me. And so came out here on a vacation, and I'd met someone, and I was like deciding whether or not I was going to move to Los Angeles. I'd made some really great friends in Chicago, so I was like, do I want to move to Chicago? But I was like, I want to come out here to be in LA and be with my family, close to my family, and this, explore this relationship that I just, started. And it was great. So that's how I landed here in LA. And he and I aren't together anymore, but I'm really glad that I met him and had that experience because it got me to LA. It really sealed the deal for me to be here in LA. Yeah, I was like being close to my family, but that the love was really like, okay, so let's make this happen. And I've been here now for 13 years and I love it so much. The first couple of years were challenging because because you're just like figuring you're in a new city, you're trying to get your sea legs, you're trying to like figure out like, okay, who am I and what do I want? Oh, and on top of everything else, now I have to actually grieve the death of my mother that I've been bypassing for the last, 6 years because I haven't lived in a one stable place long enough to really do the work.
I think, it's interesting because you have a Taurus stellium. You have 4 planets in Taurus, including the moon, which is the sign that the moon is exalted in. It's in a position of power. This is why you have such a strong sense of style, your likes and dislikes. But Taurus is the bull. It requires that stability. So the constant movement of your home every few weeks or so, every couple of months, it is very kind of unsettling to your emotions. And then you come to LA and you're able to create that stability, and
Yeah.
it's like that's when you really started to probably become in touch with your emotions. But I can totally relate to you because, you know, when I first moved to LA, it took me 2 years. And I tell everyone who moves to LA, it's like, you know, you got to give yourself 2 years before you can really make a judgment of LA, because it takes a solid 2 years to even figure out what's what, you know, which way to go. Where is everything? It's such a
Yeah.
massive city. It's not like New
Yeah.
York where New York, it just sucks you in, and there's something going on as soon as you step out the front door, but outside your building. But LA is so spread out. And so you can really get lost here amongst a lot of people where you just feel completely lonely and isolated, even though there's, you know, 10 plus million people here. It's
Yeah.
so spread out, and you got to drive everywhere. You don't know where anything is. It's can be very confusing and exhausting. So it really takes some time to kind of settle in. Is your brother and his wife, are they still in Southern California, LA
No,
area?
they're in Dallas. They're in Dallas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They're in Dallas. They moved
Yeah.
to Dallas a couple years ago. So, you know, they
Okay.
have 3 kids and,
Yep.
you know, and a lot of my sister-in-law's family lived there or has moved there. And so it makes sense for them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Yeah. So, you know, you're really you were able to settle in to that Taurus frequency and establish your self-worth, your values in terms of your home and your environment by moving and just settling in a place. And you like it here.
Oh, yeah. I love LA.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was 85 degrees today.
I know, right?
So I'm like, yeah.
It's like almost winter. It's winter, and it's like
Yeah.
80. I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt right now. I'm like, man, it's hot out there.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's hot. I stepped outside today and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
summertime. I see you. But yeah, I love LA. LA really helped me to become the person that I am today. It stretched me. It challenged me. It made me look at myself in the mirror.
How
It
so?
made me, you know, because it was like, either you're going to stay in this existence of mid, you're going to say mid, or you're going to really step into your life's purpose, because every other person you meet is doing 50-11 things in LA. And you're like, oh, I can do whatever I want here. I can create a business. I can work a corporate job. I can teach yoga. I can lead meditations. I can lead retreats. I can lead workshops. Like, I could do anything. Anything is possible here. But the weather makes people think, or sometimes can fool you into thinking it's a really soft place to live. It is absolutely not. You know, it has its soft, it has its soft spots for sure. But LA will stretch you. It will like challenge you. It will say, you know what? Oh yeah, you think so? You think that's sweet? You think you're this big fish because you were a big fish in the pond from which you came, the town in which you came from? No, because there's beautiful people every 5 seconds. There's like someone doing something that you came out here to do every 5 seconds. You see that. But what it does is it says, you know what? That just means it's just space. You know, and what I've taken away from it is like, there's just space to create. There's space for you. And once you find your village, and the only real way you find your true village is accepting yourself as you truly are. And then doing the work to enhance upon your life. If you aren't exactly where you are, you're not doing what you are, but you got to do that work, because no one's going to hold your hand out here for you. And if they are holding your hand, they're only going to hold it for so long, and they're going to slide something in it. It's going to be an invoice or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Say,
What's the
you
real
don't know who
motive
you
here?
are. We don't know. Well, we'll tell you who you are, right?
Yeah.
We'll tell you.
Yeah.
And then you can fall into that trap of being just kind of, once again, just kind of led astray. And again, we all go through that, you know, go through different iterations of friendships and whatnot, because as adults, we make friends differently than we did when we were in college or in high school, right? We're friends with people we went to school with, you know, or if you're in some sort of sorority or fraternity, that you make friends with people. Like clubs, things like that. Like, so, and that's all possible here in LA. And that's like why the city is so special to me. The city really helped save me and really helped ground me. And also really just kind of like, keeps me confused on a daily basis too. Cause it's like, okay, what's going on? What is this person doing? Or what are they setting up? Or what are they like,
it's so interesting that you say that this city helped ground you, because that really flies in the face of the stigma of LA of being like la la land, and it's like where everybody has their heads in the clouds in LA, and you're like, no, this grounded me. So I want you to walk us through the journey of coming to LA. And it feels like you were hitting your stride by coming here, because that Gemini frequency is, Gemini's the twins. So it's about having a multitude of interests or objectives that you're working to achieve, or that you're tapping into, or that you're interested in. And you mentioned, LA is a place where I can work a corporate job and be a yoga instructor and a meditation, like how did that all come about for you?
Because it's what I wanted.
Yeah. So
it's what I wanted. And I said, when I took my first yoga class in 2007, 2007 in Chicago, I knew that, I want to be a yoga teacher. I want to teach this because this felt really good in my body. And this helped me start the process of grieving the death of my mother. So any city that I would go to, travel to for work, I would always find a yoga studio. Fast forward coming here to Los Angeles, like getting my first job, leasing apartments in Hollywood at Sunset and Vine, like right in the thick of it.
Oh, wow.
It was like, okay. And you're right, that people do come out here with their head in the clouds and think like, I'd see people come in, lease apartments for me from wherever they were from, wouldn't last 6 months because they got caught up, which is really easy to do anywhere, but especially here when you're just searching for yourself, and you're searching for the meaning of life, and you're searching for where to belong, how to fit in. And it's, again, for me, that was like, I was finding it too. I was finding different meetup groups and different places to meet people, make friends, and, also like be in this relationship that I was in. And I was like, I feel like I was really blessed in the fact that I had a relationship when I was first moved out here, and I had my brother and sister-in-law and her family. But I kind of was like latched onto them, latched onto their stuff. I wasn't really like finding what brought me joy or doing like my own thing until I really stepped out of like the codependency of my relationship and the codependency of my, family, and to really like doing my own thing. And that started with my first yoga teacher training. And then kind of went into like when I ran a marathon, and I used to volunteer at the Hirschberg Foundation for pancreatic cancer research. Like I just leaped into volunteer work. I just leaped into community work. I just leaped into community building because that's what I knew. I was like, okay, if I want to meet people, let me like find these people. So pancreatic cancer is what my mom died of. Okay, I looked that up, and I was, so I can volunteer and do that, just so I'm not sitting around with like all in my own head or all this pressure on myself. And I used to tell my ex that like, if more people in this city volunteered, they'd be less stressed and less anxious and less worried about, their purpose in life, because they would be giving and doing something that has nothing to do with them. Like there's no, like, the only thing that was like me volunteering there was like, okay, them furthering enhancement in the study and the research of pancreatic cancer, which I lost my mom to. There were no tangible benefits, right? It wasn't like, okay, I get a gold star. I mean, when I ran the 5Ks and whatnot, we get a medal at the end, right? But it was like bringing friends together to have them run it with me, and creating Team Cynthia, and really doing all of these things that I just naturally was innate in me to do. But I didn't know myself. I didn't know like myself astrologically speaking, right? During this time, I honestly was just like going with where my intention led me. And I think I got it. Like I said, I get a lot of that from my mother and her community involvement. And volunteer work and being at the church and all these sort of things. So guiding me here in LA, and why I say it helped me to ground in a city that is very like in the clouds. It's beautiful. It's like sunny. It's like you can just dream any dream and it come true, or sometimes it doesn't come true in the capacity that you want it to, and that could be really disappointing. And I understand that component as well. But I really feel like with what LA has done to me recently, though, and this is all, those of you who are listening, it wasn't immediate for me. This is like 13 years in the making, like really over the last like 3-4 years. I want to say when I really stepped into full-time entrepreneurship, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is where where all of the things, all of the trials, all of the tribulations, all of the travel, everything that I've experienced in my life, all of the many lives I've lived has led me to this one point, and let's go time. And so that's what I mean when I say LA grounded me in me. And it can be a lot. There was a meme I saw a couple years ago. It was like, the best thing about LA is leaving and the best thing about LA is coming back, because it's like, I need to get out of LA and get some fresh air. I need to go like clear my mind. I need to go like regulate my nervous system. And then it's like
desert.
To the desert, which is what I love the desert so much, so much. I spent so much time in the desert this year. It was unreal. It was just so healing for me. But then it's like, all right, I'm ready to get back. I'm ready to get back to work. I'm ready to go back. But yeah, even when I go to Dallas and see my brother and sister-in-law, sorry, my ear itches. And when I see my brother and sister-in-law and the kids, I'm in Dallas. It's like, I'm like in their house and it's just like so chill, and they're like suburbs. Like we're walking around. I walk around with the kids. It's just like, it's just like a breath of fresh air. But then I'm always like, I'm a city girl at heart, but like, I know that I will have homes in different places where I can just kind of put my feet up. I can really relax. I can really just allow myself to melt, because that is something that I have always just dreamt of and desired, is like just to be able to melt in someone's arms and feel safe and create this existence for my future family. But also just kind of like be me and just be free, like I was having a conversation this morning with a friend, and he asked me if I believed in levitation. And I said, of course. And he's like, well, how do you think it's real? And I said, of course. He goes, how do you think people levitate? And I said, I don't know the answer to that specifically, but I can guess that I think it's because they're free. They're light, and I said, because we're bounded by so much in this society that we live in, that I am free, and I'm free to be me and be who I want to be and be who God made me to be. But it's also like, it feels like I'm bounded sometimes, because it's so much going on around us. It's so much happening in our society that it's like, if I'm not doing the work if I'm not working out, taking a yoga class, teaching a yoga class, meditating, doing breath work, journaling, just praying, reading, just literally sitting and staring at the wall, it's like sometimes your nervous system is like, we need this. We need to just chill for a minute. And if I'm not listening to my body, because I'm not trusting that is the truth, then that's when kind of the anxiety, the like shoulders up to your ears start to happen, And so for me, I'm like, nah, the work is constant. The work is forever. But I found that LA, there's a lot of outlets and ways in which you can just really like let your proverbial hair down in my case, but letting your hair down and allowing yourself to really like just be free.
It's an interesting complexity in your astrological code, because the North Node in Gemini aligning with your sun in the 11th house, that indicates that need for stimulation and community and a lot of different activities going on, potentially a lot of different interests. It's important for you, but at the same time, all that Taurus energy also in your astrological code indicates that need for serenity and peace and the stillness and the quiet and the space. So it's like you're searching for the balance of those two sort of polarizing frequencies. And it's finding the balance between the two of them that gives you the freedom where you're feeling like, oh, I'm levitating right now. I really like life is light and it's airy and I'm able to, to do whatever I want. So did you start working for Brookfield right when you moved to LA, or that was...
No, I worked for apartment community first at Sunset and Vine, and then
Sunset and Vine, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was there for about 3 years, and then I resigned from there, and that's where I got the job with Brookfield.
And what were you doing with them?
2014.
Yeah.
I was leasing apartments, leasing manager, creating events, building community, which is what I love to do so much. So I
that
ended up
informed your entrepreneurship in what you're doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It did. Definitely. I mean, at Sunset and Vine, I went from having $1,000 budget to then going over to Brookfield, and the budgets were way bigger. And so again, you just kind of it was just kind of like a level up. It was a level up for sure for me professionally. And so I would say really when I was at Brookfield and my time there and learning under my former boss, who's also like a mentor and soul sister, who we're still very much close to, I'm still very much close to this day, learning from her genius marketing mind, and amongst so many other things, really was the true catalyst for me having the marketing component to my business today. Cause I got my yoga teacher certification and having this marketing background to where my first job leasing apartments after college, there was no social media. I think Facebook was existing and whatnot, but that was really it. So all the marketing was grassroots marketing. I'm going to FedEx Kinko's at the time, printing out flyers that I'd made in Microsoft Word or one of the Microsoft, suite things. Yeah. And
PowerPoint,
that was, and I'm going to PowerPoint or something like that, and walking around, putting up flyers, doing all these sort of things. And so that really, it's in me, so marketing and selling and sales. And when I was at Auburn, I worked in the alumni center where I would call alumni to get them to donate money. And it's just because I used to think that I was not good at sales. I was like, I'm not great at sales. I don't know how to do it. I don't, and then I was doing it and I did great every single week, every single month. Right. And then I get a job where I'm in sales. And so, but I think that the fear with sales for me was the fact that I'd not really exercised the full potential of my voice yet. I'd not really realized my voice. I'd not really realized my power. And I didn't know how to use it as a tool versus a weapon.
And that's what you've discovered now as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's what I discovered. Absolutely. Was that, my voice and really listening and finding my voice when I took my first yoga teacher training. I mean, that really broke me open, cracked me open, shedded so many things for me. So for me to really be who I am today, yoga changed my life. It saved my life.
And so you, long before you became a full-time entrepreneur, you were already an entrepreneur on the side with your yoga teacher. Being a yoga teacher, working in a yoga studio. So when did that start for you? As opposed to, in comparison to 4 years ago, you became a full-time entrepreneur. When did
it started? It started. I mean, it went right when I was done with my yoga teacher training.
When
some
was
of my
that?
former. It was 2000. So we were coming up on 9 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 9 years ago.
So 2015.
Yeah, 2015. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So no, 2016. It was definitely 2016. Yeah, 2016. And so And after I was done with that, I would just ask my colleagues, like, do you guys want to do yoga? Can I teach your yoga class? Just pay me whatever you want. Pay me. And I just want the practice. I want to be able to teach a couple different yoga studios. I was like, I'll come teach. Yeah, fine. Pay me whatever. I don't care. I just wanted to teach because I wasn't worried about the money when it came to teaching yoga because I had a full-time job.
Right.
And I was like, I just want to teach. And so any opportunity I got to teach, anytime anybody was open to come into my classes, it made me happy. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how I went from, I was like, okay, this is great. And then I would teach, anytime I was like, I would wake up in the morning, teach a 6 a.m. yoga class, go to work, be there at 9, and then get off. And some nights I would go teach a yoga class after working a 10-hour day.
Wow.
And because I knew, I was like, I'm not going to give up teaching yoga for this career. So I've got to make it work, even if that means lack of sleep, even if that means I'm not able to be as present in my relationship as I'd like to. If that means I don't see my friends as much, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is me being able to go and teach yoga and this, because it's just everything to me.
And so yoga helped you find your voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To hold space as a teacher, to teach in a room of sometimes 5 people, sometimes 500 people, 1,000 people, teaching yoga at festivals. Wow. I never in 1,000 years thought that when I stepped into the hot yoga studio many moons ago, that this would be my life. I knew that I wanted to teach yoga, but I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know the path for it. I didn't have a mentor. I still don't.
Yeah. No,
I mean, I have a few people that are my teachers, but I'm still figuring it out my own way.
It's such a beautiful reflection because when I think of your human design, you're a non-specific manifester. And so it's you just had an idea, I want to teach yoga. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
It's just open. And by remaining open to the possibilities of what it means to be a yoga teacher, all the abundance flowed to you of, teaching classes, teaching at festivals, doing retreats, all of these experiences that you did not specifically manifest came into fruition because of your openness. It's almost like the universe is saying to you, look, Ace, we've got a plan for you that's bigger than you can comprehend. So so don't try to pigeonhole it, because the more that you do, the more you're limiting yourself from the possibilities that exist for you.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. So what is your voice? What is your message? What do you want to share with the audience? What's your insight?
Everything's going to be okay.
Uh-huh.
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's just the message. Everything is going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that's the truth this week. It has been just a mantra that has just been sealed inside of me. Everything is going to be okay. And It might not feel like it at the moment. You might feel like you're drowning. It might feel like you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can't see the forest for the trees. You might just feel buried, but everything is going to be okay. And it's okay to make a mess. It's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to not know. And it's okay. It's just okay. And I think that and I also feel there are rules and ways in which to, have social decorum, but there are no rules. Whatever, however you, feel this most recent election went, do you, really do you, because there's no rules. Because if you want to, I'm sure that when the first influencer, whoever that was, which I personally think it was Paris Hilton. She's an icon, legend. We love, I stand Paris Hilton, whatever. At me if you want to. But so. Absolutely she was. Absolutely she was.
That was 20 plus years ago. She was the influencer. Yeah.
Early for 2000s.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Icon. And so having, but no one ever thought that would actually become a job. Mm-hmm. No one thought that a social media degree would actually be a real thing.
Wow.
Or, I mean, maybe not in our generation, right? But it's like, no one knew, like, it was just, you get online, you just like to talk to your friends and be social. There was no business component to it. And then it developed, right? And so that right there is just like, really just kind of showing that anything is possible. Like, it really is. Now, can you do whatever you put your mind to? Like, I mean, if I really applied myself, could I be an astronaut? I mean, you know, like, maybe if I wanted it bad enough and I like studied and I put in the 10,000 hours and like my brain worked in that way, yes. But also, when I left Brookfield, I wasn't leaving Brookfield to go work at NASA. I was leaving Brookfield to follow the path of, you know, joy. And so that is my message. My message is everything is going to be okay. Stay brave in your pursuit of joy is like how I end almost like everything that I do is like, just because my life has been in pursuit of joy. And then on the other side of joy is like ultimate peace. So that's why I believe in levitating, because why not? It doesn't hurt me to not. It hasn't hurt me to believe, right? It doesn't hurt anything about me. But what it does is it's like, you know, and I was very specific. And like, he asked me, he's like, well, have you ever seen anybody do it? I said, no, not in person, but I've seen like videos and whatnot. And he's like, well, how do you know it's true? I was like, I just believe, you know, and like, I just believe. And you could also not believe. I'm not a person that needs statistics to trust. I don't need data. I'm not a data girl. I'm not a data girl. I just like know. Yes. And like, you either know or you don't know. I'm definitely love learning. I'm a person who's always a seeker of information. Beautiful. And always just kind of like, what else can I gobble up? What else can like, but also it's really exciting to have information and statistics. And I understand that that's for how some people really thrive and operate. But for me, what I've been enhancing upon now until my last breath is trusting my intuition above anything else. So that's the practice that I wish to impart upon anybody who's listening, impart upon you is like, I met Scott, I met you, I had like I had cornrows in my hair. I was so brokenhearted. I just ended a relationship that I was like, you know, I was just like, so can you help me understand myself? And then like later that day, I like, you know, it was just a sad day, but it was also an exciting day because we celebrated one of my girlfriend's engagement. It was just like, it's just the duality of my existence is going to be written about. And I'm going to write about it, right? But the duality of our existence as human beings is beautiful and it's studied and it's so magnetic and it's so powerful. And we all have this ability to just be like, you know what? I'm going to trust and believe in myself. This might not make sense to anybody else. I know people were telling me not to move to California when I first moved out here. There are no jobs. You're not going to find a job. California was in a recession. The rest of the country was thriving. You know, it always somehow, some way seems to be opposite out. Whatever California is doing, right? Then the rest of the country is like, you know, I believe it's like opposite, you know, without having another word for it because it doesn't matter. But it like, but I was like, no, I'm going to move out here. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to go to LA. And then I met someone and then like my brother's out here and I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to LA now. And I remember writing my brother, I wrote up this like contract and was like, cause you know, I lived with him and his wife. And I was like, okay, I just need like 6 months to get buy a car. And I mean, I think I actually bought a car before I even lived here full time, right? That's how sure I was. And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to get an apartment and I'm in this relationship with this guy and I don't want to move in with him, but like, you know, I really want to find my own place, but I just need 6 months. And like, he was like, okay. And so, you know, but in 30 days, I had a job, 30 days, like, you know, I did end up living with my ex. We did moving in together, which I don't regret. I don't have any regret. I mean, I have one regret we can talk about in a second, but I don't have regrets. And I was like, all right, cool. It just, you know, furthered along our relationship, faster, exacerbated it faster than I would have liked to, because we were still kind of getting to know ourselves. He was trying to figure out his stuff. I was figuring out mine. But it was like, all right, I'm doing this. And that was like within 30 days. And we got an apartment together. I moved out of my brother and my sister-in-law's house, and which is I was on my way, and I think that if we can give ourselves that kind of grace and understanding that was everything I did right? I mean, one could argue yes, because I'm sitting here in a beautiful apartment, talking to you. But also, there were some things that I'm like, okay, those were some bumps in the road, but they were beautiful lessons. So that's why I'm circling back to everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And life is beautiful, and life is expansive, and life is rich. We're all rich, it doesn't matter what's in your bank account. That's not predicated on your wealth, right? But what's predicated is on your belief in yourself, and you saying, all right, I have these gifts, I have these tools, I have these relationships, I know this community, I know what is possible for myself, I know my limits. Or perhaps you don't know your limits, so maybe you need to learn your limits. But I know I have these limits, but all right, I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to thrive. I'm ready to do this. And you will, and the universe will support you. The universe really will, and God will support you. And even having sessions with you, right, is really helping me. Okay, so looking at this, looking at that, but again, all of that. Out of all of that, at the end of the day, the most important thing is my intuition and my trust and my knowing in myself.
I love that. I mean, you're so in tune with your North Node frequency. The 12th house of your North Node is the house of the unconscious, which is where your intuition exists. You're also talking about the duality. The duality, that's the twins. Gemini's the twins. So it's about accepting the up and the down, the in and the out, the light and the shadow, understanding that, it's multifaceted. But I'm curious, did you want to circle back to the regret? We can.
It's funny.
It's a lesson, right? I mean, it's not, these things happen so that you can have the experience, so that you know that when you're in that circumstance again, you're going to make a different choice, and you can still appreciate the old version of you that made the choice that you wouldn't make today, right?
Always choose Beyoncé.
What does that mean?
So I, was engaged to be married, and it was that year of Beyoncé, headlining Coachella.
Okay.
And my ex fiance was like, we can't go to Coachella. We can't go to Coachella. We're getting married. We need to save money for this wedding. And I'm like, God, it's Beyoncé though. How am I not going to go? But I was like, okay, I'm in this relationship. I was like, all right, fair. I have to, I'm in this partnership, and we were engaged to be married. And sure enough, we broke up. And so I didn't go to Beyoncé, and I didn't have a wedding.
Oh my God.
And so that's my only regret I ever had in my entire life, is not going to Coachella to see Beyoncé. So at the end of the day, kids, choose Beyoncé.
I love it.
Choose Beyoncé. Maybe that could be the headline for our podcast.
Oh, I think it is. I was already thinking that's the clip right there that's going to go before the intro of the podcast.
Yeah, choose Beyoncé.
Such a great anecdote. Wow, that's hilarious. Oh my God. Well, man, Ace, this is so great chatting with you. I mean, I really appreciate your openness and sharing your wisdom and insight. It's fascinating to me that you're saying everything's going to be okay, because literally, one of my earlier guests, that was her words of wisdom, was that everything's going to be okay. Everything is, whatever's happening in your life is what's meant to be happening. It's all going to work out some way. It's this is the message that we're getting from the ether. As things maybe are going to become intense in the next year, with several long-term or slow-moving planets transiting into new signs, there's going to be a dramatic shift of energy and cosmic frequencies. And through that, we have to just return to ourselves and think like, how is this defining me? And reacting out of love rather than out of fear. That's a big theme for you, is always like choosing love, choosing joy. It's like when people say, follow your heart. I used to always think like, what does that mean? Follow your heart. I mean, my heart's always with me, but I think of you and your, one of your mantras about joy, that it's all about joy, the joy for life. And if you are enjoying life, if you're laughing, if you're having fun, then you're living from that heart center and you're choosing love instead of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and you could do it. And if you're afraid, if you're nervous, if you're scared, then do it scared. Do it afraid. Do it nervous, like do it. And because like, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm still kind of getting in my flow 4 years in, as a full-time entrepreneur. I'm just figuring it out one day at a time, like we all are, and I think that if we could relinquish the idea that anybody has it all figured out. And I know this is like probably like, falling on, deaf ears with your community who's listening, but it's like, we're all just doing our best at the end of the day. And if you're not doing your best, then there's still time, because if you have breath in your body, you have options. As one of my teachers says, Imani Cohen, like that's what it is. So
I always say that as long as you're breathing, there's hope. There's hope. And
I love that.
There's something else you said too that I wanted to circle back. Oh yeah, you were saying, about the if I wanted to be an astronaut, would I be able to do it? And that's been one of the points that's been coming to me recently through the astrology is, reimagining the dream in terms of who you are. Like, I wanted to be, before I was a guide who uses the language of astrology to help people navigate their way through life, I wanted to be a screenwriter. And before I wanted to be a screenwriter, I wanted to be an actor. And before I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a professional basketball player. And before I wanted to be a professional basketball player, I wanted to be a professional football player. And before that, I wanted to be Batman, and and none of those things happened, but they all informed me with who I am now. And it's through those experiences that have helped elevate my practice as a guide, as an astrologer. And I wasn't meant to be like, if you were to give me the choice between being a professional football player, being Batman, and doing what I'm doing now, I would choose this, because this is more attuned to who I am. And so it's about being open to those expansive possibilities and not getting so stuck in a rut of thinking that this is how it has to be. And so if this doesn't happen, then there's something wrong with me. And really, it's like, no, you just need to pull out of that pigeonhole and think about all the possibilities that exist beyond your present reality that you're trying to force yourself into that may not be what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
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 So
awesome. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, and I'm so happy to know you.
Thank you. The feeling's mutual, Ace. You inspire me. So thank you for being here. I just want to ask you real quick, where in the desert are you exploring? Where do you go?
I go to Joshua Tree. I have a friend who has a cabin out there.
Okay.
So out in like Yucca Valley, really just anytime. Like I had a girlfriend of mine who had a birthday celebration out in the desert. And I was like, and she invited me and I couldn't go. And I was just like, anytime I get an opportunity to go out to the desert, I'm like, yes, please.
Yes.
So yeah.
Have you ever checked out Death Valley?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Do I need to?
Oh, Death Valley. I feel like that's one of the more underappreciated or known places, like national parks. I mean, it's one of the largest national parks, if not the largest. It's massive, but there's just some really beautiful and unusual places there. Like, and if you're interested in really seeing like the night sky and the stars and that sort of stuff, there's a place called the Racetrack, which is one of the darkest places on planet Earth. Like I went there,
The
and
racetrack. That's amazing.
when you are it, I was there, and before the sun even went down, when the sky was still blue, I could see
Ooh.
hundreds of stars
Ooh.
in the blue sky.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's like you're on another planet when you're there. There's no artificial light, and you can walk out into the middle of this dry lake bed, and there's nobody there. It's just you. You can't see anyone. So it's very remote. You've got to have like a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get there over like a 20-mile like boulder road that takes like 2 hours to drive there. So yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So if you really want to go off the grid for a day or two, that's the place to go.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. I'm always open. Yeah. Let's explore. I'm always open to exploring. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Ace. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the light that you're shining into the world, and share with us where can people find you? What are you working on right now that you want to share with the audience?
First, thank you so much again for having me. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find me on all the socials at ACE Yoga LA. So at ACE Yoga LA, aceyogala.com is my website. I've got some really great things that I'm cooking up for 2025. So just stay tuned. I'll have a retreat for honoring all mothers again. It'll be the weekend before Mother's Day, which will be somewhere in the desert. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, just kind of working on some different things, still teaching with kids. And so if that's something that, piques the interest of, if you're listening, then let's connect, because I love it. I love children, and teaching them yoga and breathing and sound and meditation is the best thing ever. So yeah, just stay connected with me. You can join my mailing list, aceyogala.com, and all the socials. Thank you.
Awesome, Ace. Awesome. Well, I'm happy to have you back on whenever you've got
Anytime.
the retreats planned and you have something specific that you want to promote to the audience. I'm happy to have you on here. You're a bright, shining light and an inspiration to me. And thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Scott, so much. I love you so much. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to The Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. If you're interested in being a guest on The Weekly Transit, you can email me at scott@theweeklytransit.com. Wishing you all the best as you ride the